Good day, duelists. Has this ever happened to you? Let's say your opponent has some big scary threat, in this case a Prometheus Steel Dragon, and also a blocker protecting it, let's say a Bloody Skeeto. And you have a creature that can attack untapped creatures, most commonly this would probably be a Bazagazil Dragon. Which creature do you attack, the Prometheus or the Bloody Skeeto? Well, if you're like most people, you'll probably answer the Prometheus. After all, this is the big scary threat on the board that you want to remove, and your opponent will use their blocker to block and that will be that. But the counterintuitive thing about this scenario is that this is objectively, undeniably the wrong play. It's a very subtle misplay that probably won't matter most times, but it's a misplay nonetheless. And in this video, I hope I can make it clear to you why it's always correct to attack the blocker in this situation. So let's carefully analyze the two scenarios. If you attack the blocker directly, then the resulting board state is one in which the Prometheus dragon lives. If instead you attack the Prometheus, there are two possible scenarios. The attack goes through and the blocker lives, or the attack is blocked and the Prometheus dragon lives. Notably, this board state is the same as the one resulting from the first scenario. Now here's the important bit. The choice of whether to block or not belongs to your opponent, which means if you choose to attack the threat, your opponent gets to choose which of these two board states to end up on. And if they're a decent player, they will always choose the one that favors them the most. In other words, if you attack the blocker directly, we always end up on board state A, whereas if you attack the threat, you are giving your opponent the choice between board state A and board state B. And there's two cases, either board state A is better for your opponent, in which case it doesn't matter because both attacks end up here, or board state B is better for your opponent, in which case attacking the threat is a mistake because you could have forced them into a worse board state by attacking the blocker. Think about it, when you're attacking the threat, you're probably thinking it will get blocked anyway and the blocker will die, but if that's the case, why not attack the blocker in the first place? Why give your opponent a choice? Because keep in mind your assumption that it is favorable for your opponent to block is just that, an assumption. Now sure, it's true that 99% of the time it's probably better for your opponent to block and keep their threat up, but why take the risk of ending up in that 1% scenario? And right now you're probably thinking, come on Bazad, this is ridiculous, why would my opponent ever choose to keep a Bloody Skeeto over a Prometheus? Well, I don't know, what if you each only have 2 cards left in deck and the only cards your opponent has are Eldritch Poisons, which is hidden information to you, and then they have a Necro Dragon Zalva in their mana zone. So they choose not to block to keep their Bloody Skeeto, sacrifice it with Eldritch Poison to take and play their Zalva, forcing you to draw a card and decking you out after you draw your last card for the turn. Okay, that scenario might be slightly unrealistic, but let me show you something that actually happened during an International Duel Masters Cup tournament game. So we're in this situation, I have a Bloody Skeeto on board and no shields, and my opponent summons a Pyrofighter Magnus. And here there is a choice between using the Pyrofighter to attack me directly and attacking my tapped Aqua Surfer. I was playing a dragon deck, so destroying my Surfer does have its merits as it can prevent a potential lethal push from a Magma Dragon Jagazor or Bazagazil Dragon. But if you'll notice, this is the exact same scenario that we were talking about before. Here you can either attack my face, which forces me to block and lose my blocker, or you can attack a creature, which gives me the option of choosing between keeping my threat and keeping my blocker. And both options have their merit. If the Surfer lives, I can, like we discussed, push for lethal with a Jagazor or a Bazagazil. If the blocker lives, I can lost soul my opponent and I am safe even against a speed attacker top deck. I get time to rebuild and I will probably win from there since my opponent is now out of steam. And because I am the one making the choice and I know the cards in my hand, I can make an informed decision. If I have Jagazor in hand, I will block, and if I have lost soul in hand, I will let the attack go through. So zooming out, from my opponent's perspective, if they choose to attack Phase, they lose to Jagazor. If they choose to attack Surfer, they also lose to Jagazor because I can block, but now they also lose to Lost Soul because I can choose not to block. So hopefully this example shows how giving your opponent that choice can be dangerous, especially when you have a way of avoiding that completely by just attacking the blocker. Unfortunately in the match itself I didn't have either Jagazor or Lost Soul, so I ended up losing anyway, so justice was not served in the end, but regardless that doesn't change the fact that the misplay was still a misplay. And I think that just about covers it. Many of you probably know about this pitfall already, but for those of you who don't, I hope you learned something new today, and until next time duelists, take care.